History Behind the Mystery, Mystery of the Ages, and all its reprints. Mr. Armstrong completed Mystery of the Ages in the final years of his productive life. In August 1985, Mr. Armstrong personally presented Mystery of the Ages to the students of the Fundamentals of Theology class. It would prove to be one of the last times he spoke in public. Mystery of the Ages was originally written for the students at Ambassador College. Mr. Armstrong said to get this book to, quote, the largest audience possible. Now, the original copyright page, as you see on your screen, reads, Copyright 1985 by Worldwide Church of God. Pasadena, California, all rights reserved. No parts of this book may be reproduced in any form without the permission in writing from the Worldwide Church of God. So, in 1997, the Philadelphia Church of God did a pirate softback reprint of this 1985 book, and the copyright page of that looks like this. Copyright 1985 by Herbert W. Armstrong. This is actually a 1997 pirate edition of Mystery of the Ages. I bought this copy of the book off eBay, and I thought it was the original because it said copyright 1985. But the seller of this book didn't know that the copyright, even though it reads 1985 and by Herbert Armstrong, this book was actually printed in 1997. And when Philadelphia Church of God reprinted Mystery of the Ages in 97, they changed the copyright page from the Worldwide Church of God to Herbert W. Armstrong, as you can see on your screen. So once I opened the book to the copyright page and I seen it was 1985 by Herbert Armstrong, I knew I didn't have the original 1985 edition. So there was a long court case, started in 1997 and it ended in 2003. And the Philadelphia Church of God actually bought the copyrights to Mystery of the Ages and 18 other works of Mr. Armstrong. I got, when did I order my copy? I think I ordered my Mystery of the Ages copy from like 2009 or something like that. Because my copyright page just reads like this. Copyright 1985, the original, and 2009, Philadelphia Church of God, all rights reserved. But the current edition, look at all these copyrights. Copyright 1985, 2003, 2005, 2007. What's weird is it don't mention 2009 and then 2020. And with each reprint, the Philadelphia Church of God changed something. Now, the most noticeable changes is when they won the copyrights in 2003, there's a part about no prophets being in the church in chapter 6 and 7 of Mystery of the Ages that conveniently were left out of the 2003 onward Philadelphia reprints, and I would like to mention they didn't leave any asterisk or footnote indicating it had been removed. Now notice the original Chapter 6, Mystery of the Ages. This is the 1985 hardback edition. It says, the prophets set in the foundation of the church are those of the Old Testament, whose writings were used to form a considerable part of the New Testament and gospel teaching and function. Now the part underlined in red is the part not in the Philadelphia Church reprint, and I will explain why later. No prophets are mentioned as having either administrative, executive, or preaching functions in the New Testament church. Evangelists were leading ministers, etc., etc. That's the original. But now look at the reprint where that is just edited out. And if you notice where those arrows are is where that part underlined in red in the 1985 edition ought to be there. So, the prophets set in the foundation of the church are those of the Old Testament, whose writings were used to form a considerable part of the New Testament and gospel teaching and function. Evangelists were leading ministers. You notice how that whole part about no prophet being over God's church in the New Testament is completely left out of the 2003 reprint and onward. And there's a similar statement mentioned in chapter 7 of Mystery of the Ages. It says, there was no such doctrinal committee in the first century headquarters church at Jerusalem. All teaching came from Christ through the apostles, and a few times Christ communicated to apostles via the prophets. And again, the red part isn't in any of the reprints, the Philadelphia church, of which, talking about the prophets, there are none in God's church today, since the Bible is for our time is complete. God's church today, as in the first century, receives its teaching from the living Christ through an apostle, just as in AD 31. But notice the Philadelphia reprint, and now where the red arrows are is where that statement should say, or should be. There were no such doctrinal committees in the first century headquarters church at Jerusalem. All teaching came from Christ through the apostles, and a few times Christ communicated to apostles via the prophets. And remember, in parentheses, of which there's no prophets in God's church today, seeing the Bible is a complete book for our time. God's church today, as in the first century church, receives its teaching from the living Christ through an apostle, just as in AD 31. So you may be saying, well, what's the big deal? What's the big deal is they're not the one who wrote the book, and when they got the copyrights, then they started to change it, and they yoinked out that there's no prophet over God's church, because the founder of the Philadelphia Church of God, Gerald Flurry, wrote a booklet called Who is That Prophet? And he said how he's that prophet over God's church. But that directly contradicts what Mr. Armstrong wrote in Mystery of the Ages. So that part was yoinked out. And with each reprint, like I say, I don't even know what else they've changed. But I know with each reprint, they add a little more, subtract a little more, so then the page numbers don't line up. So then it's harder and difficult to research it. And then a person may have the argument, well, edited version's better than nothing. Well, is it really? When Gerald Flurry and his son Stephen Flurry sell themselves as they follow Herbert Armstrong to the T, to the letter, and they're here to uphold his legacy. Well, I don't see how it upholds his legacy when you change his books to accommodate your wrong doctrine. I just thought you should know that the Mystery of the Ages reprints are edited, and I got to confess that I finally found a hardcover 1985 edition off eBay tonight, and I bought 2 softcover editions, one for my friend and another one for my mom. So we got our original copies, and I know I'm geeked about it. I've been looking for an original copy for probably diligently at least 10 years now. So when those copies finally arrive, you better believe I'm going to make another video on this. So this is just part 1 of History Behind the Mystery of the Ages and all its reprints. And if you don't think it matter, little things add up to much. So it does matter. And if it doesn't matter, the devil wouldn't have changed it. And just as a side note, this isn't a personal attack on Gerald Flurry, nor is it a personal attack on Herbert Armstrong. It's putting the truth out there, because you should know these things, and you decide what you'll do with this information. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more videos from Brave Warrior Productions.